The casket had not even been lowered when Elena Whitmore broke through the crowd, screaming that the man inside was still breathing. Nobody expected it. The whole town of Ravenhollow had gathered under a gray sky to bury Damien Voss, the Alpha King, a man so powerful that even the wind seemed to bend around him when he walked. Now he lay still, in a black casket lined with silver thread, his face pale, his hands folded over his chest. Hundreds of pack members stood in silence, heads bowed, grief hanging over them like fog. Elena had no business being there. She was a waitress at a small diner on the edge of town, a place where truck drivers and tired travelers stopped for coffee and eggs. She was not pack. She was not even supernatural, as far as anyone knew. She had come only because her shift ended early, and she had walked past the funeral procession on her way home, drawn by something she could not explain. At first she only meant to watch from a distance, the way strangers watch a parade. But then her ears caught something, a sound so faint that she almost convinced herself she imagined it. A heartbeat, slow, weak, but there. She told herself she was wrong. People did not come back to life, but the sound repeated, steady as a clock ticking in a quiet room, and something inside her chest tightened with a certainty she could not ignore. She pushed through the crowd before her mind could stop her body. Guards moved fast, hands reaching for her shoulders, but she twisted free and kept running until she reached the edge of the platform where the casket rested. The crowd gasped. Someone shouted for her to stop. She ignored all of it. "He's not dead!" she shouted, her voice cracking over the silence. "Please, someone check him. He's not dead." For a moment, nobody moved. It was as if the entire town held its breath, unsure whether to laugh, cry, or call for the guards to drag her away. Marcus Voss, brother of the fallen king, stepped forward with his jaw tight and his eyes cold. He was tall, sharp-featured, dressed in a black coat that made him look more like a mourner in a painting than a grieving brother. There was something unreadable in the way he looked at Elena, something that did not match sorrow. "Take her away," he said flatly. "This is not the place for hysterics." Two guards grabbed Elena's arms, pulling her back from the casket. She struggled, kicking against the ground, refusing to be silent. "Listen to his chest," she cried. "I can hear it. Please, just listen." Whispers spread through the crowd like fire jumping from branch to branch. Some people looked at her with pity, assuming grief had broken her mind, though she had no relation to the king at all. Others looked afraid, wondering if she carried some strange curse. A few, though only a few, exchanged uncertain glances, as if some small part of them wondered if she could be telling the truth. Dr. Mira Ashford, the pack's healer, stood near the casket, her hands folded, her face unreadable. She had examined Damien's body 3 days earlier and declared him dead beyond doubt. But something about the desperation in Elena's voice made her pause. "Wait," Mira said, raising a hand. The guards halted, though they kept their grip on Elena's arms. Marcus turned toward Mira with visible irritation. "You already confirmed his death. There is nothing left to examine." "A moment will not hurt anyone," Mira replied evenly. "If she is wrong, we bury him in peace. If she is right." She did not finish the sentence. She did not need to. Marcus's jaw tightened, but he said nothing more. The crowd watched in stunned silence as Mira stepped toward the casket, placing her hand against the wood before slowly opening the lid. Elena stopped struggling, her eyes fixed on the healer, her heart pounding so hard she was sure everyone around her could hear it too. Mira leaned down, pressing 2 fingers gently against Damien's neck, then placing her ear close to his chest. Seconds passed. The crowd did not breathe. Even the wind seemed to hold still. Then Mira's eyes widened. "There is a pulse," she whispered, though the silence of the crowd carried her words far. "It's faint, but it is there." Gasps rippled through the townspeople. Someone screamed. Someone else fainted. Marcus's face went pale, the color draining from his cheeks, as if someone had punched the air from his lungs. "That is not possible," he said, his voice sharp, almost accusing. "I examined him myself. We all did." "It is faint," Mira repeated, "but real. This is not an ordinary case. Something is keeping him suspended between life and death." Elena felt the guards loosen their grip on her arms, their attention now fully on the casket. She stepped forward cautiously, her heart hammering with a strange mixture of relief and fear. "I told you," she said quietly, though her voice trembled. I could hear it. I don't know how, but I could hear it. Mira looked at her with sharp curiosity, the kind of look a scientist gives an unexpected result. How did you hear a heartbeat this faint from that distance? Even our best trackers could not have caught it. Elena had no answer. She had always been able to sense things others could not, small things, like knowing when someone was in danger before they spoke a word, or feeling warmth radiate from someone's chest, even through thick clothing. She had learned long ago to keep these things to herself, afraid people would think she was strange, or worse, afraid of her. I don't know, she finally said. I've always been able to sense things like this. I never told anyone. I didn't think it mattered. Marcus stepped closer, his eyes narrowing at her with suspicion rather than gratitude. Or perhaps she already knew something the rest of us did not. The crowd murmured again, doubts spreading like smoke. Elena felt the weight of dozens of eyes on her, judging, questioning, some kind, some cruel. Mira raised her hand for silence. Whatever the reason, we do not have time for accusations. If the king is alive, even faintly, then every second matters. I need him moved to my chambers immediately. Her voice carried an authority that even Marcus did not dare challenge. Guards rushed forward, lifting the casket carefully, carrying Damien's still body away from the burial ground and toward the healer's private quarters at the edge of the Pax estate. Elena stood frozen, watching them go, unsure if she should follow or disappear back into her ordinary life. But something kept her rooted to the spot, a pull she could not explain, the same pull that had drawn her toward the funeral in the first place. You, Mira said, turning back to her before disappearing through the crowd. Come with me. I may need you. Elena blinked, startled. Me? I don't know anything about medicine. You heard something none of us could hear, Mira said simply. That alone makes you valuable right now. Reluctantly, Elena followed, her heart still racing, her mind spinning with questions she could not answer. Around her, the crowd broke into chaos, some crying tears of shock and hope, others whispering fearful theories about curses and dark magic. Marcus stood apart from all of it, his eyes fixed on Elena's retreating back, his expression unreadable, calculating. As they reached the healer's private chambers, Mira ordered the guards to place the casket gently on a long wooden table. She began preparing herbs and instruments with quick, practiced hands, her sharp eyes scanning Damien's still body for any further signs of life. Elena stood near the doorway, unsure of her place in the room, watching the woman who held the fate of an entire kingdom in her careful hands. Sit, Mira instructed without looking up, and do not touch anything, unless I tell you to. Elena obeyed, lowering herself onto a wooden stool near the wall, her eyes never leaving Damien's face. He looked peaceful, almost like he was merely sleeping, his dark hair falling slightly over his forehead, his features strong even in stillness. How is this possible? Elena finally asked, breaking the tense silence. How can someone be alive but seem completely dead? Mira paused, glancing toward her with a serious expression. There are old poisons, rare and dangerous, capable of placing a body into something similar to deep sleep. To an untrained eye, and even to a trained one, it appears as death. The heart slows to almost nothing. Breathing becomes nearly invisible. If we had buried him even an hour later, there would have been no chance of reversing it. A chill ran down Elena's spine. Someone did this to him on purpose? Mira's eyes darkened. It is the only explanation. This is not a natural death, nor an accident. Someone wanted the kingdom to believe their king was gone. Elena's stomach twisted with unease. She thought of Marcus's cold expression, the way his face had not shown grief but calculation. She said nothing, though the thought lingered heavily in her mind. Mira worked for what felt like hours, mixing herbs into a thick paste, checking Damien's pulse repeatedly, murmuring words Elena did not understand. Outside, the sounds of the crowd slowly faded, as guards dispersed the townspeople, sending them home with promises of an explanation once things were clearer. Finally, Mira straightened, wiping sweat from her brow. I have done what I can for now. His body is stabilizing, but I do not know how long it will take before he wakes, if he wakes at all. Elena felt her chest tighten with worry, though she barely knew the man lying on the table before her. Will he be all right? Mira studied her for a long moment before answering. That depends on how strong he is, and perhaps, she added, glancing toward the door where guards stood watch. "How quickly we can uncover who did this to him, before they try again." Elena's hands trembled slightly in her lap. She had only meant to walk home after her shift. She had never imagined she would find herself standing in the private chambers of an Alpha King's healer, tangled in a mystery far bigger than herself. But as she looked at Damien's still face, something inside her refused to walk away now. "I want to help," she said quietly. "Whatever this is, I want to help figure it out." Mira raised an eyebrow, studying her carefully. "You may not have a choice, given how deeply you are already involved. But be warned, child. Whoever did this will not be pleased that their plan has failed. And now that you have exposed it, you may have made yourself a target as well." Elena swallowed hard, but she did not look away. Outside the chamber, Marcus stood in the shadows of the hallway, arms crossed, his eyes fixed on the closed door. His expression was unreadable, but his mind raced with calculations, worry, and something far darker than either. The Alpha King was alive, and that changed everything. 3 days passed before Damien Voss opened his eyes, and when he did, the first thing he saw was a stranger's face leaning over him, instead of his brother's. Elena had barely left the healer's chambers since that first night. She told herself it was curiosity, or perhaps guilt, as if she were somehow responsible for the danger that had nearly taken his life. But the truth was simpler and stranger. She could not walk away. Something kept pulling her back to that room, to the sound of his slow, steady heartbeat, now growing stronger with each passing hour. Mira had barely slept either, checking his pulse every few hours, mixing new remedies, watching for any sign of infection or relapse. Guards stood outside the door day and night, and word had spread quietly through the pack that their king might yet live, though details remained hidden from the wider town to prevent panic, or worse, an attack from enemies who believed him already gone. When Damien's eyes finally fluttered open, a soft groan escaped his throat, and Elena nearly jumped from her seat. "He's waking up," she called out, her voice sharp with urgency. Mira rushed to his side instantly, checking his pulse, his breathing, shining a small light briefly across his eyes. Damien blinked slowly, disoriented, his gaze drifting across the unfamiliar ceiling, before settling on the two women beside him. "Where?" he rasped, his voice dry and broken. "Am I?" "You are safe," Mira said gently, though firmly. "You were poisoned. You have been unconscious for 3 days. Do not try to move too quickly." Damien's brow furrowed as memories seemed to fight their way back into his mind. His eyes darted around the room before landing on Elena, who stood slightly behind Mira, unsure whether she should even be present for this moment. "Who?" he said slowly, studying her face, as though trying to place her. "Are you?" "Elena," she answered quietly. "Elena Whitmore." He continued to stare at her, confusion evident in his tired eyes. "I do not know that name." "She is the reason you are alive," Mira said simply, stepping back slightly to let the weight of her words settle. "Your entire pack believed you dead. They were prepared to bury you 3 days ago. Elena stopped the funeral. She heard your heartbeat before anyone else even suspected you were alive." Damien's eyes widened, sharp and alert despite his exhaustion, fixing intently on Elena's face. "You heard my heartbeat? From how far?" Elena shifted uncomfortably under his gaze. "I'm not entirely sure. I was walking past the funeral. I heard it faintly, but clearly enough to know it was real." "That should not be possible," Damien murmured, more to himself than to her. "Even our trackers, with heightened senses, did not detect it." "That is exactly what I said," Mira added. "There is something unusual about her abilities, something we do not yet understand." Damien studied Elena for a long moment, his expression unreadable, caution and curiosity mixing behind his tired eyes. Despite his weakened state, there remained an unmistakable authority in the way he carried himself, even lying flat against a healer's table. "Thank you," he finally said, his voice quieter now, sincere. "Whatever you are, whoever you are, you saved my life." Elena felt heat rise to her cheeks, unused to such direct gratitude from someone so powerful. "I just did what felt right," she said simply. "I couldn't ignore what I heard." Mira cleared her throat, breaking the moment. "You need rest, Your Majesty. Your body has been through an extraordinary trial. We will discuss everything else once you have regained more strength." Damien nodded reluctantly, though his eyes lingered on Elena a moment longer, before he allowed exhaustion to pull him back into a lighter, more natural sleep. Over the following days, Damien's strength slowly returned. Mira kept his recovery a closely guarded secret, allowing only a small circle of trusted guards and advisors to know the truth. The wider pack still believed their king remained gravely ill, recovering from an unknown sickness, a story crafted carefully to avoid alerting whoever had orchestrated the attack in the first place. Elena found herself drawn into this secretive circle, staying near the healer's chambers, assisting where she could, though she had no formal skills in medicine. She brought food, changed linens, and most importantly, sat with Damien during the long hours when his mind remained restless despite his body's need for rest. During one such evening, as rain tapped softly against the chamber windows, Damien studied her carefully from his bed. "You are not Pac," he said quietly. "Not supernatural in any way we recognize. Yet you sense something none of us could. Doesn't that strike you as strange?" Elena set down the cloth she had been using to cool his forehead, considering her words carefully. "My whole life, I've noticed things others don't. I hear sounds from far away sometimes. I sense danger before it happens. I always assumed I was simply anxious or overly sensitive. I never imagined it meant anything more." Damien's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. In old stories, there existed humans, gifted with senses, meant to protect supernatural leaders, long before our current bloodlines took control. They were called sentinels. But that lineage was believed extinct centuries ago. Elena blinked, startled. "You think I could be one of them?" "I do not know," Damien admitted, "but I intend to find out." The conversation left Elena's mind spinning, long after Damien drifted back to sleep. She had spent her whole life believing herself ordinary, hiding away the strange instincts that made her feel different from everyone around her. The idea that she might belong to some ancient, nearly forgotten lineage felt both thrilling and terrifying. Meanwhile, outside the healer's quarters, Marcus grew increasingly restless. He visited his brother's chambers only briefly each day, always accompanied by guards, always watched closely by Mira, who trusted him less with each passing hour. "You seem tense, brother," Damien remarked one evening, his strength slowly returning enough to sit upright against his pillows. Marcus forced a tight smile. "Only relieved that you are recovering. The pack has been through enough uncertainty already." "Indeed," Damien said evenly, his eyes studying his brother carefully. "It seems someone wanted the pack to believe I was gone permanently. I intend to discover who." Marcus's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "As do I." The tension between the brothers remained carefully hidden beneath polite words, though Elena, watching quietly from the corner of the room, noticed the way Marcus's eyes flickered with something colder than concern each time he looked at his brother. She said nothing, unsure if her instincts were simply overactive imagination or something far more real. Later that night, after Marcus departed, Damien called Elena closer to his bedside. "I want you to remain here, within the estate," he said firmly. "Whoever attempted this will not be pleased that their plan failed, and now that you have exposed it publicly, you may be in danger as well." Elena hesitated. "I have a life outside these walls. A job, a small apartment, people who will wonder where I've gone." "I will ensure your absence is explained," Damien said. "But I cannot protect you if you return to an unguarded life, while an unknown enemy remains free." Elena studied his face, searching for manipulation or hidden motives, but found only genuine concern, layered beneath his authoritative tone. "All right," she finally said. "I'll stay, but only until this is resolved." Damien nodded, though something in his expression suggested he hoped for more than a temporary arrangement. Neither of them spoke the deeper truth settling quietly between them, an inexplicable pull neither fully understood, growing stronger with each passing day they spent within the same walls. Outside, beneath a moonless sky, a hooded figure watched the estate from a distant hill, informed already that the king they believed dead now breathed once more. The plan had failed, but it was far from over. The morning light had barely touched the estate windows when Dr. Mira Ashford burst into Damien's chambers with a scroll clutched tightly in her hand, her face pale with an urgency that made Elena's stomach twist immediately. "I found something," Mira said, her voice low but shaking with intensity. "About the poison used against you. Damien, now strong enough to sit fully upright without assistance, gestured for her to continue. Elena remained near the window, though she leaned forward, unwilling to miss a single word. "It is called Silver Veil Root," Mira explained, unrolling the scroll across the table. "A rare and forbidden substance, banned centuries ago for its cruelty. It does not simply kill. It suspends the body between life and death, mimicking every sign of death, so precisely that even skilled healers cannot detect the difference without specific knowledge of its symptoms." "Which means whoever poisoned me," Damien said slowly, "did not intend for me to die immediately." "Exactly," Mira confirmed. "They intended for you to be buried alive, trusting that the earth itself would finish what the poison started. It is one of the cruelest methods recorded in old texts, reserved historically for enemies whose captors wished them to suffer even in supposed death." Elena felt a chill crawl across her skin. Who would even know how to obtain something so rare? Mira's eyes flickered briefly toward the door, before lowering her voice further. "That is the troubling part. Silver Veil Root does not grow naturally within our territory. It exists only in the northern mountains, controlled entirely by the Ashgrove Pack, longtime rivals of House Voss." Damien's expression darkened. "Gideon Cross." "The very same," Mira confirmed. "Alpha of the Ashgrove Pack, and a man who has coveted this territory for years." Elena watched as Damien's jaw tightened, his hands curling slightly against the blanket covering his lap. If Gideon orchestrated this, he will not stop simply because his first attempt failed. He will try again, more carefully this time. "There is something else," Mira added carefully. "Silver Veil Root cannot be administered from a distance. It must be given directly, likely through food or drink, meaning whoever poisoned you had access to your private meals." The room fell silent as the weight of her words settled heavily over everyone present. "Someone within these walls," Damien said quietly, "helped Gideon Cross poison me." Elena's mind raced immediately toward Marcus, though she hesitated to voice such an accusation without proof. Loyalty within royal families was complicated, and she did not yet fully understand the dynamics between the brothers. As if reading her thoughts, Mira glanced briefly toward her before speaking carefully. "I do not accuse anyone without evidence, but I believe it is time we investigate quietly, without alerting whoever is responsible that we suspect them." Damien nodded firmly. "Agreed. For now, only the three of us, along with Captain Lucas Bennett, will know the full truth of what we've discovered. The rest of the pack continues to believe I am recovering from an unknown illness." Lucas Bennett, the estate's trusted guard captain, was summoned within the hour. He was a broad-shouldered man with sharp eyes and an even sharper sense of loyalty, having served House Voss faithfully since childhood. When told of the discovery, his expression hardened with quiet fury. "I will personally review every guard and servant who had access to your meals in the days before the funeral," Lucas said firmly. "If someone within these walls betrayed you, I will find them." Discreetly, Damien reminded him. "We cannot risk alerting Gideon that we know the truth. Let him believe his plan succeeded partially, that I remain gravely weakened." Lucas nodded sharply before departing, to begin his quiet investigation. Over the following days, life within the estate settled into a strange, careful rhythm. Damien's strength continued returning steadily, though he remained confined largely to his private chambers to maintain the illusion of ongoing illness. Elena found herself spending increasing amounts of time by his side, initially out of necessity, though gradually the reasons felt less obligatory and more personal. "You do not have to sit here every day," Damien told her one afternoon, watching as she arranged a small tray of food beside his bed. "You have given more than enough already." "I know," Elena replied simply, "but I want to." Damien studied her for a long moment, something unreadable shifting behind his eyes. "Why?" Elena considered the question carefully before answering. "Because for the first time in my life, someone believed me, instead of dismissing what I sensed as imagination. That matters more than you might realize." A faint, genuine smile touched Damien's lips, rare and unguarded. "You have no idea how rare that same honesty is for me as well. Most people around me speak carefully, calculating every word for political advantage. You simply say what you feel." Elena felt warmth rise to her cheeks under his gaze, though she quickly redirected the conversation, uncomfortable with how easily he seemed to see through her. "Dr. Mira mentioned old legends," she said, "about sentinels. Do you truly believe I could be connected to something like that?" Damien nodded slowly. The evidence certainly suggests it. Perhaps it would help to learn more about your family history. Do you know anything about your parents, your lineage? Elena's expression grew distant, tinged with old sadness. My mother passed away when I was young. My father left before I was born. I was raised mostly by my grandmother, who rarely spoke about our family's past. She always seemed cautious, almost fearful, whenever I asked questions about where we came from. Perhaps she knew something she did not wish to burden you with, Damien suggested gently. Elena considered this possibility for the first time, wondering what secrets her grandmother might have carried silently for so many years. Their conversation was interrupted by a soft knock at the door. Lucas entered, his expression grim, carrying a small folded note in his hand. "I found something," he said quietly, glancing briefly toward Elena before addressing Damien directly. "A servant who prepared your final meal before the funeral has gone missing. Her quarters were cleared out entirely, as though she left in a hurry." Damien's expression hardened instantly. "Find her." "I am already searching," Lucas confirmed. "But there is something else. Witnesses claim she was seen speaking privately with your brother on multiple occasions in the weeks before the incident." The room grew tense, silence stretching heavily between them. Elena watched Damien's face carefully, searching for any reaction, though he remained carefully composed, despite the implication hanging in the air. "That does not prove anything definitively," Damien finally said, though his voice carried less certainty than his words suggested. "Marcus speaks with many servants regularly." "Of course," Lucas agreed carefully. "I simply believed you should know." After Lucas departed, silence lingered heavily within the room. Elena hesitated before speaking softly. "Do you truly believe your own brother could be involved in this?" Damien's expression remained conflicted, torn between loyalty and suspicion. "Marcus and I have never been particularly close, especially since our father's passing. He has always believed he deserved equal claim to leadership, despite tradition dictating otherwise. But betrayal of this magnitude—" He paused, shaking his head slowly. "I do not wish to believe it, yet I cannot dismiss the possibility entirely." Elena reached out instinctively, placing a gentle hand over his. "Whatever the truth turns out to be, you are not facing it alone." Damien looked down at her hand resting over his, something shifting quietly behind his tired eyes, gratitude mixed with something deeper. Neither of them dared name aloud. Outside the estate walls, unaware of the quiet investigation unfolding within, Marcus Voss stood alone within his private study, staring silently at a folded letter bearing the seal of House Ashgrove. His hands trembled slightly as he read the words written within, before feeding the parchment carefully into the flames of his fireplace, watching it curl and blacken into ash. Whatever plans he had set into motion, they were far from finished. The missing servant was found 3 days later, hiding in a small village 2 territories away, and what she revealed changed everything Damien believed about the people closest to him. Lucas Bennett brought her back quietly under the cover of night, avoiding the main roads to prevent word from spreading. Her name was Clara Doyle, a young woman who had worked within the estate kitchens for nearly 2 years, known for her quiet nature and steady work ethic. Now she sat trembling in a small private room, her hands shaking so badly that she could barely hold the cup of water offered to her. "I did not know what it truly was," Clara said, her voice cracking under the weight of fear and guilt. "I was told it was simply a special herb, meant to ease his sleep during a difficult time. I never imagined it would be used to harm him." Damien, seated across from her with Mira and Elena standing nearby, kept his expression carefully controlled despite the anger simmering beneath the surface. "Who gave you this herb?" Clara hesitated, her eyes darting nervously toward the door, as though expecting someone to burst through at any moment. "I cannot say. If they discover I have spoken, they will silence me permanently." "You are safe here," Damien assured her, though his tone carried unmistakable authority. "But if you withhold information that could protect this entire pack, you will bear responsibility for whatever follows." Clara's shoulders sagged under the weight of her fear and conscience warring within her. Finally, tears welling in her eyes, she whispered a name that confirmed everyone's darkest suspicion. Marcus Voss. The room fell utterly silent. Elena felt her stomach twist painfully, watching Damien's expression shift from controlled anger to something far more devastating. quiet heartbreak hidden beneath layers of practiced composure. He told me it was for your protection, Clara continued quickly, desperate to explain herself. He said there were enemies plotting against you, and that this herb would keep you safely hidden until the danger passed. I swear I did not know it would nearly kill you. Mira stepped forward, her expression grim but professional. The herb she describes matches silver veil root precisely. Whether she understood its true purpose or not, this confirms Marcus's direct involvement. Damien remained silent for a long moment, his jaw clenched tightly, his eyes distant as though replaying years of memories through an entirely new, darker lens. "Leave us," he finally said quietly, addressing Clara. "Lucas will ensure your safety, provided you remain willing to testify to what you have told us." Clara nodded quickly, relief and lingering guilt mixing across her features, as Lucas gently guided her from the room. Once the door closed, silence stretched heavily between Damien, Mira, and Elena. Finally, Damien spoke, his voice quieter than Elena had ever heard it. "My own brother tried to have me buried alive." Elena moved closer, though she remained uncertain what comfort she could offer for such a devastating betrayal. "I'm so sorry." Damien shook his head slowly. "I suspected it deep down, yet some part of me refused to believe it possible. We were close once, before our father's passing. I do not understand how ambition could twist him so completely." "Power changes people," Mira said gently, "especially when they believe they deserve something denied to them by tradition alone." Damien's hands curled into tight fists against his knees. "What proof do we have that would hold against him publicly? A frightened servant's testimony alone may not be enough, especially against someone of his standing." "We need more than her word," Mira agreed. "If we accuse him without solid proof, he could easily manipulate the situation, painting himself as the victim of a desperate conspiracy." Elena thought carefully before speaking. "What about correspondence? If he was working with the Ashgrove pack, surely there would be some form of communication between them." Damien's eyes sharpened at the suggestion. "You may be right. Marcus has always been careful, but even careful men leave traces eventually." "I can search his private study," Lucas offered, having returned quietly after settling Clara elsewhere within the estate. "Though it will require considerable caution. If he discovers we suspect him prematurely, he may act rashly, or worse, flee entirely before facing consequences." "Do it carefully," Damien instructed. "I want undeniable proof before I confront him directly." Over the following days, tension within the estate grew increasingly suffocating, though outwardly, everything appeared calm and orderly. Marcus continued his daily visits to Damien's chambers, maintaining his composed, concerned expression, unaware that his brother now viewed him through entirely different eyes. Elena found herself growing increasingly anxious whenever Marcus entered the room, her instincts screaming warnings she had learned to trust completely. She noticed small details others might dismiss, the way his eyes lingered too long on certain objects, the subtle tightness around his mouth whenever conversations shifted toward the ongoing investigation into the poisoning.
"You seem tense whenever my brother visits," Damien observed one evening after Marcus departed.
Elena hesitated before answering honestly. "Something about him has always unsettled me, even before we knew the truth. I suppose my instincts were trying to warn me all along." Damien studied her thoughtfully. "Perhaps your abilities extend beyond simply detecting heartbeats. Perhaps you sense intentions as well, honesty and deception hidden beneath careful words." Elena considered this possibility seriously for the first time. "I've always been able to tell when someone was lying, even as a child. I assumed everyone could sense it the same way, until I realized how wrong I was." "That would align perfectly with old descriptions of sentinels," Damien said thoughtfully. "Protectors gifted with heightened perception, specifically to guard against betrayal and hidden danger." Their conversation was interrupted by Lucas entering hurriedly, his expression tense with barely contained urgency. "I found something," he said quietly, producing a small, carefully folded letter, hidden within a locked drawer inside Marcus's private study. Damien took the letter carefully, unfolding it with steady hands despite the tension radiating from his posture. His eyes scanned the contents quickly, his expression darkening further with each line. "This confirms everything," he said quietly, passing the letter to Mira, who read it with equally grim recognition. The letter, written in careful, coded language, clearly outlined an agreement between Marcus and Gideon Cross, promising Marcus full support and claiming leadership over House Voss, in exchange for granting Ashgrove access to disputed northern territories currently controlled by the Voss pack. He was willing to sacrifice our people's land, Damien said quietly, anger finally breaking through his controlled exterior, simply to secure his own ambition. Elena watched him carefully, understanding the depth of betrayal settling heavily over him. What will you do now? Damien folded the letter carefully, his expression hardening into something colder, more determined than she had yet witnessed. I will not act rashly. If I confront him prematurely, he may find a way to twist the situation. Or worse, escape entirely before facing justice. Then what is your plan? Mira asked carefully. Damien's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. We continue allowing him to believe his plan succeeded partially, that I remain weakened and unaware of his betrayal. Meanwhile, we gather further proof, ensuring that when the moment comes, there will be no possible defense left available to him. Lucas nodded firmly in agreement. I will continue monitoring his movements discreetly. As the others departed to continue their careful investigation, Elena remained beside Damien, watching quietly as he stared down at the folded letter resting heavily in his hands. I am sorry, she said softly. No one deserves betrayal from someone they trusted so deeply. Damien looked up at her, something vulnerable flickering briefly behind his otherwise composed expression. Perhaps this is precisely why I find myself trusting you so completely, despite knowing you for such a short time. You have given me nothing but honesty since the moment we met. Elena felt her heart tighten at his words, an unfamiliar warmth spreading through her chest, despite the darkness surrounding their current situation. Neither of them spoke further, though the quiet understanding, growing steadily between them, needed no additional words to feel undeniably real. Outside, unaware that his betrayal had already been discovered, Marcus continued moving forward, with plans that would soon collide catastrophically with the truth, waiting patiently to expose him. Word arrived quietly one morning that Gideon Cross had requested a formal meeting with House Voss, unaware that his secret alliance with Marcus had already been exposed, and Damien saw immediately the opportunity such a meeting could provide. He believes I remain gravely weakened, Damien explained to Mira, Lucas, and Elena, gathered privately within his chambers. He wishes to negotiate terms, while our pack appears vulnerable, likely hoping to secure additional advantages before his plan with Marcus reaches completion. This could be dangerous, Mira warned carefully. If you appear before him too strong, he may suspect something has gone wrong with his plans. Which is precisely why I do not intend to appear at all, Damien said, a calculated glint entering his tired eyes. Marcus will attend the meeting on my behalf, believing I remain too weak to participate personally. We will use this opportunity to gather further proof of his betrayal, capturing whatever discussions occur between them. Lucas nodded approvingly. I can position guards discreetly nearby, close enough to overhear their conversation without detection. Elena listened carefully, though a nagging worry settled uncomfortably in her chest. What if something goes wrong? What if Marcus grows suspicious of being watched? That is a risk we must accept, Damien said firmly. We need undeniable proof, spoken directly between them, to ensure Marcus cannot later claim innocence or manipulate the pack's perception of events. The plan proceeded carefully over the following days. Marcus, unaware of the trap being carefully constructed around him, agreed readily to represent his brother during negotiations with Gideon Cross, likely believing this arrangement would further strengthen his position of influence within the pack. On the day of the meeting, Elena found herself unable to remain calmly within the estate, anxiety twisting uncomfortably through her chest as she awaited news of how the confrontation would unfold. You should rest, Mira suggested gently, noticing Elena's restless pacing within the healer's private study. There is nothing more you can do until Lucas returns with information. I know, Elena admitted, but something about all of this feels dangerous, in ways I cannot fully explain. Mira studied her carefully. Your instincts have proven remarkably accurate so far. Perhaps you should trust them now as well. Elena paused, considering Mira's words seriously. She closed her eyes briefly, focusing inward the way she had learned to do since childhood, listening carefully to whatever quiet warnings her instincts offered. A sudden sharp unease gripped her chest, urgent and unmistakable. Something is wrong, she said suddenly, her eyes snapping open. I need to speak with Damien immediately. Mira did not question her further, understanding by now the seriousness behind Elena's abilities. Together, they hurried toward Damien's private study, finding him reviewing documents quietly at his desk. Elena senses something is wrong, Mira explained quickly, regarding the meeting. Damien's expression sharpened instantly, setting aside his documents. What do you sense exactly? Elena struggled briefly to articulate the vague, urgent warning, pulsing through her instincts. Danger. Not just for Marcus's betrayal being exposed, but something more immediate. I believe Gideon may be planning something beyond simple negotiations. Damien's jaw tightened. An ambush, perhaps, disguised as a diplomatic meeting. It's possible, Elena admitted. I cannot be certain of specifics, only that the danger feels close and urgent. Damien rose immediately, moving toward the door with sudden determination. I need to send additional guards immediately, quietly, without alerting Marcus that we suspect anything beyond simple negotiations. Mira caught his arm gently. You are still recovering. You cannot rush into danger yourself. I do not intend to reveal myself publicly, Damien assured her. But I will not sit idly by if my brother, despite his betrayal, faces danger he does not anticipate. Nor will I risk further harm coming to our people through Gideon's deception. Elena watched him carefully, admiring the complicated loyalty he maintained, despite everything Marcus had done. Even now, faced with undeniable betrayal, Damien could not entirely abandon concern for his brother's safety. Additional guards were dispatched quietly, positioned discreetly around the meeting location, a neutral clearing situated precisely between Voss and Ashgrove territories. Lucas led the reinforcement personally, ensuring their presence remained hidden from view. Hours passed slowly within the estate, tension mounting steadily as everyone awaited news. Elena remained close beside Damien, her instincts still humming uncomfortably despite the precautions already taken. Finally, as evening shadows began stretching long across the estate grounds, Lucas returned, his expression grim but relieved. It was indeed an ambush, he confirmed immediately. Gideon intended to eliminate Marcus once negotiations concluded, likely intending to blame the incident on rogue elements within our own pack, further destabilizing House Voss from within. Damien's expression darkened with quiet fury. He intended to use Marcus, then discard him once his usefulness ended. Precisely, Lucas confirmed. Fortunately, our reinforcements intervened before Gideon's men could act, though Marcus remains unaware of exactly how close he came to danger. Elena felt a strange mixture of relief and unease settle over her. Despite everything Marcus had done, she did not wish harm to come to him, understanding that justice, not vengeance, was the appropriate path forward.
What now? She asked quietly. Damien's expression grew resolute. Now Marcus faces the truth.
It is time he understands fully the danger he has placed himself, and our entire pack within, through his own reckless ambition. That evening, Marcus returned to the estate, shaken though attempting to mask his unease with practiced composure. He was summoned immediately into Damien's private study, where Damien, Mira, Lucas, and Elena already waited. You wish to see me? Marcus asked carefully, though his eyes flickered nervously toward the serious expression surrounding him. Damien remained silent for a long moment, studying his brother carefully before finally speaking. I know what you have done, Marcus. Marcus's carefully constructed composure faltered visibly, his eyes widening with barely concealed panic. I do not understand what you mean. Do not insult me further with denial, Damien said, his voice quiet, but carrying unmistakable authority. I know about the poison, I know about your arrangement with Gideon Cross, and I know he intended to eliminate you as well, once your usefulness to him concluded. Marcus's face drained of color entirely, his hands trembling slightly at his sides. Damien, Save your explanations, Damien interrupted sharply. I want to understand only one thing. Why? Why would you betray our own family, our own people, simply for power you were never meant to claim? Marcus's expression twisted, with years of buried resentment finally breaking free. Because I was always meant to stand beside you, not beneath you. Father groomed you for leadership from birth, while I remained merely an afterthought, expected to support decisions I had no voice in making. That does not justify attempting to murder your own brother, Mira interjected sharply. Marcus's shoulders sagged slightly, some of his anger deflating into quiet, exhausted regret. I never intended for it to go this far. Gideon promised me support, promised me recognition I felt I deserved. I did not realize how deeply his ambitions would consume everything, including my own safety. Damien studied his brother carefully, complicated emotions warring visibly behind his controlled expression. Your ambition nearly cost me my life, Marcus, and it very nearly cost you yours as well. Marcus lowered his eyes, unable to meet his brother's gaze any longer. What happens now? Damien remained silent for a long moment, considering carefully before finally speaking. You will face judgment before the Pack Council, as tradition demands. But first, you will help us ensure Gideon Cross faces consequences for his actions as well. Perhaps through this, you may begin repaying the trust you have so thoroughly betrayed. Marcus nodded slowly, understanding fully the seriousness of his situation, though something within his expression suggested genuine remorse, finally settling beneath years of buried resentment. As guards led Marcus quietly towards secured quarters within the estate, Elena remained beside Damien, watching his expression carefully. That must have been incredibly difficult, she said softly. Damien nodded slowly, exhaustion evident beneath his controlled composure. Betrayal from family cuts deeper than any wound Gideon's poison could inflict. Yet perhaps there remains hope for redemption, however distant that possibility feels right now. Elena reached out gently, offering quiet comfort through simple presence rather than words. Damien accepted the gesture gratefully, understanding fully the strength required to face such complicated family betrayal with measured justice rather than blind vengeance. Outside, beyond the estate walls, Gideon Cross remained entirely unaware that his carefully constructed plans had already begun unraveling completely. News of Marcus's confinement could not remain hidden forever, and within days, whispers began spreading through the pack, forcing Damien to make a decision he had hoped to delay far longer. The council demands answers, Lucas reported one morning, his expression tense. Rumors are spreading rapidly, some accurate, many exaggerated, wildly beyond recognition. If we do not address this directly soon, panic and confusion will only worsen. Damien, now fully recovered in physical strength, though still burdened emotionally by recent events, nodded grimly. Gather the council. It is time the pack learned the truth, carefully presented to avoid unnecessary panic. That afternoon, pack elders and senior members gathered within the great hall, murmurs of confusion and concern rippling through the assembled crowd as Damien entered, visibly healthy despite weeks of rumored illness. Gasps of shock and relief mixed together as pack members registered their king's obvious recovery, disbelief evident across many faces. I understand confusion surrounds recent events, Damien began, his voice carrying clearly across the hushed hall. I owe you all an honest explanation. He proceeded carefully, explaining the poisoning, the false appearance of death, and Elena's crucial intervention that prevented his premature burial. Murmurs of astonishment rippled through the crowd as details unfolded, eyes turning curiously toward Elena, who stood quietly near the hall's entrance, uncomfortable beneath sudden collective attention. Furthermore, Damien continued, his expression hardening. Investigation revealed the poisoning was orchestrated through a secret alliance between my brother, Marcus Voss, and Alpha Gideon Cross of the Ashgrove Pack. Shock rippled violently through the assembled crowd, disbelief and anger mixing visibly across many faces. Elders exchanged alarmed glances, murmuring urgently amongst themselves. This cannot be true, one elder finally spoke aloud, disbelief evident in her trembling voice. Marcus would never betray his own family so completely. I wish it were untrue, Damien said quietly, genuine sorrow evident beneath his controlled composure. But evidence remains undeniable. Marcus has confessed fully to his involvement. The hall fell into stunned silence, the weight of such profound betrayal settling heavily over everyone present. Finally, another elder spoke, his voice grave with concern. What consequences will Marcus face? He will stand before this council formally, Damien confirmed. Judgment will be rendered according to tradition and law, fairly and without unnecessary cruelty, despite the severity of his actions. Murmurs of uneasy agreement rippled through the crowd, understanding the necessity of fair judgment despite collective anger toward Marcus's betrayal. As the meeting concluded, Pack members slowly dispersed, quietly processing the shocking revelations they had just witnessed. Elena remained near the hall's entrance, watching Damien carefully as he addressed lingering questions from concerned elders. Eventually, once the hall emptied fully, Damien approached her, exhaustion evident despite his controlled exterior. "That was more difficult than I anticipated," he admitted quietly. "You handled it well," Elena reassured him gently. "Honesty, even painful honesty, tends to earn respect eventually." Damien studied her carefully, appreciation clear behind his tired eyes. "You have become remarkably important to me these past weeks, Elena. Not simply for saving my life, but for your steady honesty and quiet strength throughout everything that followed." Elena felt warmth rise gently through her chest at his words, though she remained cautious about assuming too much regarding feelings neither of them had yet openly acknowledged. "I'm glad I could help," she said simply, though her voice carried more emotion than she perhaps intended to reveal. Their quiet moment was interrupted by Mira's sudden arrival, her expression urgent. "There is something you both need to see immediately," she said quickly, gesturing for them to follow her toward the estate archives. Curious and slightly alarmed, Elena and Damien followed quickly, arriving within a small, dimly lit archive room filled with ancient scrolls and dusty historical records. "I have been researching Sentinel lineage extensively since discovering Elena's unusual abilities," Mira explained, unrolling an ancient, fragile scroll carefully across a wooden table. "I believe I have finally found something significant." Elena leaned forward curiously, studying faded illustrations depicting humans standing protectively beside supernatural rulers, their eyes glowing faintly with an unmistakable, otherworldly awareness. "According to this record," Mira continued, "Sentinels were humans specifically chosen by ancient supernatural bloodlines, gifted with heightened senses precisely to protect against betrayal and hidden danger. Their abilities activated specifically when bonded closely to a particular supernatural leader, growing stronger the deeper that bond became." Damien's eyes widened slightly, understanding dawning gradually. "You believe Elena's abilities activated specifically because of some connection to me? It would explain why her senses reacted so precisely to your situation," Mira confirmed. "Sentinels historically bonded closely with specific leaders, their abilities remaining otherwise dormant until triggered by proximity or emotional connection." Elena felt a strange mixture of wonder and unease settle over her. "Are you suggesting some kind of fated connection between us?" Mira hesitated slightly before answering carefully. "The historical records suggest exactly that, though the full nature of such bonds remains unclear even within these ancient texts." Damien studied Elena carefully, complicated emotions shifting visibly behind his thoughtful gaze. "Whatever the explanation, I find myself deeply grateful for whatever brought you into my life, Elena. Fate, coincidence, or ancient bloodlines aside, your presence has meant more to me than I initially realized." Elena felt her heart quicken slightly at his words, uncertain how fully to respond, given the complexity of everything unfolding around them. "I feel similarly," she admitted quietly, "though everything about this situation remains overwhelming." Mira, sensing the private nature of their conversation, quietly excused herself, leaving Damien and Elena alone amidst ancient scrolls and flickering candlelight. "Regardless of ancient prophecy or ability," Damien said softly, stepping closer, "I want you to know, my gratitude toward you exists entirely separate from whatever mystical connection may or may not bind us together." Elena looked up at him, genuine warmth evident behind her cautious expression. "Thank you for saying that. Sometimes it's difficult separating genuine feelings from extraordinary circumstances." Damien nodded understandingly, though he did not step away, the space between them charged quietly with unspoken possibility. Their moment, however, was interrupted abruptly by Lucas, bursting urgently into the archive room, his expression tense with fresh concern. "Apologies for interrupting," he said quickly, "but we have received troubling news. Gideon Cross has publicly denied any involvement in the poisoning, and worse, he has accused House Voss of fabricating false accusations to justify aggressive expansion into Ashgrove territory." Damien's expression hardened instantly, the warmth of the previous moment replaced swiftly by renewed determination. "He seeks to turn public opinion against us before we can expose him fully." "Precisely," Lucas confirmed grimly. We must act carefully, or risk this situation escalating into open conflict between our packs. Elena watched Damien's expression shift rapidly from vulnerability to sharp, focused leadership, understanding clearly the weight of responsibility resting constantly upon his shoulders. Gather the council again, Damien instructed firmly. It is time we present undeniable proof publicly, ensuring Gideon's lies cannot manipulate opinion against us. As Lucas departed swiftly to arrange the necessary preparations, Damien turned briefly back toward Elena, his expression softening slightly, despite the seriousness surrounding them. Whatever challenges lie ahead, he said quietly, I am grateful to face them, knowing you stand beside me. Elena nodded firmly, determination settling clearly behind her steady gaze. I'm not going anywhere. Outside, unaware that his lies had already begun unraveling beneath mounting evidence, Gideon Cross continued preparing his own next move, confident that ambition alone would secure him victory, regardless of truth or consequence. The public gathering called to expose Gideon Cross's lies drew crowds from every corner of Voss territory, tension thick enough to feel in the very air surrounding the great outdoor amphitheater, where both packs had agreed, reluctantly, to meet. Elena stood near the front alongside Mira and Lucas, watching nervously as representatives from House Ashgrove arrived, led by Gideon Cross himself. He was a tall, broad-shouldered man, with sharp features and calculating eyes, his confident posture suggesting a man entirely certain of his own victory. Damien stood opposite him, composed and dignified, despite the weight of recent betrayal still fresh within his heart. Marcus, under careful guard, remained present as well, his expression a complicated mixture of shame and quiet determination to help correct the damage his choices had caused. You dare accuse me publicly of orchestrating an assassination attempt, Gideon began loudly, his voice carrying confidently across the assembled crowd, based on nothing more than the confession of a desperate, disgraced brother seeking to shift blame away from his own failures? Murmurs rippled through the crowd, uncertainty evident among those unfamiliar with the full details Damien had previously shared only privately with his own pack council. I do not rely solely on my brother's confession, Damien replied calmly, his voice steady and clear. We possess written correspondence directly linking you to this conspiracy, along with testimony from a servant who witnessed the poison's exchange. Gideon's confident expression flickered briefly, though he recovered quickly. Documents can easily be forged. Testimonies can be coerced. You offer nothing but convenient accusations designed to justify future aggression against my territory. Elena felt her instincts sharpen immediately, sensing the confident deception woven carefully through Gideon's words. She leaned close toward Mira, whispering urgently. He's lying, I can sense it clearly, though I don't believe simple testimony alone will convince this crowd. Mira nodded subtly, understanding the delicate balance required to expose Gideon definitively without further destabilizing peace between the packs. Damien, sensing the same uncertainty rippling through the crowd, calmly gestured for Lucas to step forward. We anticipated exactly such denial, Damien announced clearly, which is why we have brought forth additional proof. Lucas stepped forward, presenting formally to the assembled crowd a small, ornate container. Within this container remains a sample of silver veil root, the very poison used against our king, recovered directly from Ashgrove territory through careful, verified investigation. Gasps rippled through the crowd as Lucas continued explaining the rarity and origin of the poison, emphasizing clearly that only Ashgrove territory contained natural sources of this exceptionally dangerous substance. Gideon's composure faltered slightly further, though he attempted quickly to regain control of the narrative. Possessing knowledge of a rare herb's origin proves nothing regarding my personal involvement. Perhaps not alone, Damien agreed calmly, but combined with written correspondence bearing your personal seal, along with witnessed meetings between yourself and my brother, the pattern becomes undeniable. Marcus, standing quietly under guard, finally spoke aloud, his voice steady, despite visible shame. I confirm everything stated here today. Gideon Cross approached me directly, promising support in claiming leadership over House Voss, in exchange for granting Ashgrove access to disputed territories. I foolishly agreed, unaware fully of the danger my choices would create. The crowd's murmurs grew louder, uncertainty shifting steadily toward outrage as understanding solidified around Gideon's undeniable guilt. Gideon's expression darkened, his earlier confidence crumbling rapidly beneath mounting public disbelief. "This is absurd," he snapped, anger finally breaking through his carefully constructed composure. "I refuse to stand here accepting blame based on desperate lies from a disgraced traitor and manipulated evidence." "There is one final piece of evidence," Damien said calmly, gesturing toward Elena. Elena felt her heart race suddenly, as attention shifted, unexpectedly toward her. She stepped forward carefully, uncertain exactly how her abilities could serve as formal evidence before such a large gathering. "This woman," Damien explained clearly, "possesses heightened senses capable of detecting deception with remarkable accuracy. I ask that she confirm publicly whether Gideon Cross speaks truthfully in his denials." Gideon's eyes narrowed skeptically, clearly doubting such an unusual claim. "You expect this crowd to accept judgment based on some human's supposed intuition?" "I expect this crowd to judge for themselves," Damien replied evenly, "once they witness her accuracy directly." Elena took a steadying breath, closing her eyes briefly to focus entirely on the subtle instincts she had spent her entire life learning to trust. When she opened her eyes again, she looked directly toward Gideon, her voice clear and steady, despite lingering nervousness. "Ask him directly whether he ordered the poisoning." Damien turned back toward Gideon, his voice carrying clearly. "Did you orchestrate the poisoning attempt against me?" Gideon's jaw tightened, his eyes flickering briefly with unmistakable panic before composing himself once more. "Absolutely not." Elena felt the deception immediately, sharp and unmistakable, radiating clearly from his tense posture and shifting eyes. "He's lying," she announced clearly, her voice carrying firmly across the hushed crowd. "I can sense it without doubt." Murmurs of astonishment rippled loudly through the gathering, eyes shifting rapidly between Elena's confident assertion and Gideon's visibly faltering composure. "This is preposterous," Gideon snapped, though his voice now carried noticeable strain. "You expect a room full of respected pack members to accept judgment based on some mystical parlor trick? Ask him one more question," Elena suggested calmly, turning toward Damien. "Ask him directly about his agreement with Marcus." Damien nodded, turning back toward Gideon. "Did you promise my brother support in claiming leadership over House Voss in exchange for territorial concessions?" Gideon hesitated, sweat visibly forming along his brow despite the cool afternoon air. "I deny any such formal arrangement." Elena felt the deception even more strongly this time, unmistakable and clear. "He's lying again," she confirmed firmly. "And this time, his own body betrays him, even without my abilities. Look at him." The crowd's attention shifted immediately toward Gideon, noticing clearly now the sweat, the trembling hands, the shifting eyes that any careful observer could recognize as unmistakable signs of deception. Gideon's composure finally crumbled entirely under mounting public scrutiny. "Fine," he snapped bitterly. "I orchestrated the poisoning. I sought territorial expansion, believing House Voss vulnerable and susceptible to manipulation through Marcus's ambition. I do not regret my actions, only that they failed." Shock and outrage erupted immediately throughout the crowd, pack members shouting angrily, demanding immediate justice against Gideon's blatant confession and unapologetic betrayal. Damien raised his hand calmly, silencing the crowd's anger with practiced authority. "Justice will be served appropriately, according to law and tradition, not through chaotic vengeance." Gideon, realizing fully the severity of his exposed betrayal, attempted suddenly to flee, his guards moving quickly to restrain him before he could escape the gathering entirely. As chaos settled gradually into structured order, Elena remained standing quietly near Damien, exhaustion and relief mixing together as the weight of public confrontation finally eased from her shoulders. Damien turned toward her, gratitude evident clearly behind his controlled composure. "You have once again proven invaluable, Elena. Without your abilities, Gideon may have successfully manipulated public opinion against us." Elena managed a tired smile. "I'm simply glad it's finally over." But even as she spoke the words, uncertainty lingered quietly within her chest, an unshakable feeling that despite Gideon's exposure and capture, deeper challenges remained ahead, challenges neither she nor Damien fully anticipated just yet. With Gideon Cross formally imprisoned and awaiting judgment before a combined council of neighboring packs, Elena finally allowed herself a moment of quiet relief, though Mira's ongoing research into her mysterious lineage soon reignited fresh curiosity and unexpected complications. "I believe I have located records regarding your family specifically," Mira announced one afternoon, gathering Elena and Damien once more within the estate archives. Her expression carried careful excitement, tempered by clear caution. Elena felt her pulse quicken with anticipation. "What did you find?" Mira unrolled an old, carefully preserved family record, pointing toward a specific lineage chart, depicting names stretching back centuries. "Your grandmother's family name, Whitmore, appears directly within historical sentinel records, dating back nearly 300 years. Elena stared at the faded ink, tracing the unfamiliar names carefully with her fingertips, overwhelmed by the sudden connection to a history she had never known existed. "My grandmother never mentioned any of this." "Perhaps she did not know herself," Mira suggested gently. "Or perhaps she deliberately hid this knowledge, fearing the responsibilities or dangers associated with such a rare and powerful lineage." Damien studied the records carefully alongside Elena, his expression thoughtful. "If sentinels historically served as protectors bonded closely to supernatural leaders, perhaps your grandmother feared exactly this scenario, worried that revealing your heritage might place you directly within dangerous political circumstances." Elena considered this possibility seriously, memories resurfacing of her grandmother's occasional distant sadness, subtle warnings delivered cryptically throughout her childhood, without clear explanation. "She used to tell me," Elena said quietly, "that some gifts come with burdens heavier than people realize. I always assumed she meant something more abstract, perhaps related to kindness or empathy. Now I wonder if she meant this literally." Mira nodded thoughtfully. It would explain her caution. Sentinel bonds, according to these records, often placed individuals directly within dangerous political intrigue, sometimes even leading to targeted violence against them, specifically to weaken supernatural leaders they protected. Elena felt a chill settle uncomfortably over her, understanding now clearly the potential danger her newfound connection to Damien and his pack could create. "Does this mean I am now a target simply because of this bond?" she asked carefully. Damien's expression grew serious, protective instinct evident clearly behind his thoughtful gaze. "It is possible, especially now that your abilities have become publicly known throughout both our pack and the wider supernatural community following today's confrontation with Gideon." Mira nodded gravely in agreement. "We must take precautions immediately. If enemies of House Voss discover Elena's crucial role in exposing recent conspiracies, they may attempt directly to harm her, either out of vengeance or strategic advantage." Elena felt anxiety twist uncomfortably through her chest, though she straightened her shoulders with quiet determination. "I do not intend to hide simply out of fear. If I truly am meant to protect Damien and this pack, I will not abandon that responsibility now." Damien studied her carefully, admiration evident clearly behind his protective concern. "Your courage continues to impress me, Elena. But please understand, additional precautions are simply about ensuring your safety, not limiting your choices." Elena nodded, appreciating the careful balance Damien maintained between protective concern and genuine respect for her autonomy. Over the following days, additional security measures were quietly implemented throughout the estate, guards positioned more closely around Elena whenever she moved beyond the estate's private chambers. Though she initially found the added attention uncomfortable, she gradually understood its necessity, given the seriousness of recent events. During this period, her relationship with Damien continued deepening steadily. Quiet moments shared during meals, evening walks through private estate gardens, and long conversations exploring both her newfound heritage and his own complicated responsibilities as Alpha King. "I never expected to find comfort so easily with anyone," Damien admitted one evening, as they walked slowly along a quiet garden path, illuminated softly by lantern light. "Leadership often isolates a person, surrounded by advisors and allies, yet genuine connection remains rare." Elena smiled softly, appreciating his openness. "I understand that isolation more than you might realize. Growing up different, sensing things others could not, often left me feeling similarly isolated, even surrounded by people." Damien paused, turning to face her directly beneath the soft glow of lantern light. "Perhaps that shared understanding is precisely why our connection feels so effortless, despite everything surrounding us." Elena felt warmth spreading gently through her chest, though a lingering uncertainty caused her to hesitate slightly. Damien, I want to be honest with you. I worry sometimes that whatever connects us might simply be this ancient sentinel bond, rather than something genuinely personal between us specifically. Damien considered her words seriously, respecting her honesty completely. That thought has crossed my mind as well, he admitted quietly. Yet when I consider carefully everything we've shared, the ease of your honesty, your quiet strength, the way you challenge me thoughtfully, rather than simply agreeing out of obligation, I recognize clearly that whatever bond exists between us, my feelings toward you personally remain genuine and separate from any ancient prophecy or bloodline. Elena felt reassured deeply by his careful, thoughtful response, understanding fully the sincerity behind his words. Thank you for saying that. It means more than you realize. Their quiet, intimate moment was interrupted gently by Lucas, approaching carefully, his expression apologetic, though clearly urgent. Forgive the interruption, he said respectfully, but we have received word from the neighboring pack council regarding Gideon Cross's judgment. Damien nodded seriously, understanding immediately the importance of such news. What have they decided? Gideon has been formally stripped of his leadership position, Lucas explained. He will face lifelong exile from all supernatural territories, forbidden from ever holding power or influence again. Damien nodded slowly, satisfaction evident, though tempered by continued seriousness. Justice served appropriately, without unnecessary cruelty. There is more, Lucas continued carefully. Ashgrove Pack has requested formal negotiations regarding new leadership, hoping to repair damaged relations between our territories moving forward. Damien's expression grew thoughtful. This presents an opportunity to strengthen peace between our packs permanently, provided negotiations proceed carefully and fairly. Elena watched quietly as Damien's focus shifted naturally back toward his responsibilities as Alpha King, understanding fully the constant balancing act required of someone holding such significant authority. I should prepare for these negotiations immediately, Damien said, turning apologetically toward Elena. I'm sorry to cut our evening short. Elena smiled reassuringly. Please go. Your responsibilities come first, especially now with such an important opportunity for lasting peace. Damien studied her gratefully, before departing quickly alongside Lucas, leaving Elena alone briefly, within the quiet garden, her thoughts lingering pleasantly over their earlier conversation, despite the sudden shift back toward political matters. Yet even as she remained hopeful regarding growing peace between the packs, a quiet unease lingered persistently within her instincts, an unspoken warning suggesting that despite recent victories, greater challenges still remained hidden just beyond clear view. Negotiations with the Ashgrove Pack proceeded smoothly over the following weeks, new leadership emerging from within their ranks, eager to repair relations and establish lasting peace between the two territories. Yet even as diplomatic matters settled, Elena's quiet unease refused to fade entirely, her instincts persistently warning her that unresolved danger still lingered somewhere nearby. She mentioned this feeling carefully to Damien one evening, as they sat together within his private study, reviewing recent diplomatic correspondence. I don't want to alarm you unnecessarily, she began carefully, but I continue sensing something unresolved, a danger I cannot clearly identify. Damien set aside the documents he had been reviewing, giving her his full attention immediately. Your instincts have proven remarkably accurate thus far. I will not dismiss this warning lightly. I wish I could offer more specific details, Elena admitted, frustration evident in her voice. It feels distant, yet persistent, almost as though something remains unfinished, despite Gideon's exposure and Marcus's confession. Damien considered this carefully. Perhaps we have overlooked something within the conspiracy itself. Gideon and Marcus may not have acted entirely alone. Elena's eyes widened slightly at this possibility. You believe there could be additional conspirators we haven't yet identified? It's possible, Damien admitted. Conspiracies of this magnitude often involve more individuals than initially apparent. Perhaps it would be wise to review the investigation once more, carefully searching for any details we may have previously overlooked. The following morning, Damien called together Mira, Lucas, and Elena once again, reviewing carefully every piece of evidence gathered throughout the recent investigation, searching diligently for any overlooked connections. Here, Lucas said suddenly, pointing toward a detail within Clara's original testimony. She mentioned receiving instructions initially through an intermediary, someone she never directly identified, beyond describing them as cautious and careful, always meeting in secluded locations. We assumed this intermediary was simply a servant working directly for Marcus, Mira added thoughtfully, but perhaps there was someone else involved, someone whose identity Marcus himself never fully understood. Damien's expression grew serious. We need to speak with Clara again, carefully, to determine if she can offer any additional details regarding this mysterious intermediary. Clara was summoned once more, understandably nervous despite reassurances regarding her safety. Under gentle but careful questioning, she recalled additional details previously overlooked. The person who approached me, she explained slowly, concentrating carefully to recall specific memories, always wore a hood, concealing their features entirely. Yet I recall distinctly a faint scent, something floral, unusual, almost like wildflowers growing in mountain regions. Mira's eyes sharpened immediately at this detail. Mountain wildflowers, similar to those found specifically within regions bordering Ashgrove territory, yet distinct enough to suggest an origin slightly further north, perhaps within neutral territories currently unclaimed by any supernatural pack. Damien's brow furrowed thoughtfully. An independent player, perhaps someone seeking to benefit indirectly from conflict between our packs, without directly aligning themselves openly with either side. Elena felt her instincts sharpen immediately, a distant but persistent warning, solidifying gradually into clearer focus. Whoever this is, I believe they remain nearby, watching carefully, waiting for another opportunity to act. Lucas nodded seriously. I will increase security measures immediately, particularly around Elena, given her crucial role in exposing previous conspiracies. Over the following days, careful investigation slowly uncovered additional clues, whispers of a mysterious figure operating quietly within neutral territories, someone skilled at manipulating tensions between rival packs without revealing their own identity or motives clearly. Elena found herself growing increasingly restless, her instincts persistently warning her of danger, drawing steadily closer, though she remained frustratingly unable to pinpoint exact details. One evening, while walking alone briefly through the estate gardens despite increased security precautions, Elena suddenly felt an overwhelming surge of alarm, sharp and immediate, unlike anything she had previously experienced. She turned quickly, scanning the shadows carefully, her heartbeat quickening with sudden certainty that she was being watched closely. "Show yourself," she called out firmly, though her voice trembled slightly with genuine unease. For a tense moment, silence stretched heavily around her, until finally, a figure emerged carefully from the shadows, cloaked and hooded, their features obscured deliberately. "You possess remarkable instincts," the figure said calmly, their voice carefully neutral, impossible to identify clearly as male or female. "It's rare to encounter someone capable of sensing my presence so precisely." Elena's heart pounded rapidly, though she forced herself to remain composed, refusing to allow fear to overwhelm her judgment. "Who are you? What do you want?" The figure remained silent momentarily, studying her carefully from beneath their hood. "Consider this simply a warning, Elena Whitmore. Your involvement in recent events has disrupted plans set carefully into motion, long before Gideon Cross or Marcus Voss became involved. Tread carefully moving forward, or you may find yourself facing consequences far greater than you currently realize." Before Elena could respond further, the figure disappeared quickly into the shadows, leaving her standing alone, breathless and unsettled within the quiet garden. She rushed immediately back toward the estate, alerting Damien, Mira, and Lucas urgently to what had just occurred. "This confirms our suspicions," Damien said grimly, once Elena finished recounting the unsettling encounter. "Someone else remains involved, someone far more cautious and calculated than either Gideon or Marcus. Whoever this is," Mira added seriously, "they possess significant knowledge regarding supernatural politics, careful enough to manipulate events from behind the scenes without directly exposing themselves." Lucas's expression hardened with renewed determination. "I will increase security measures immediately, doubling guards around Elena and the estate itself." Elena, despite lingering unease, straightened her shoulders with quiet resolve. "Whoever this is, I do not intend to allow fear to control my actions moving forward. If they wish to challenge us further, we will face that challenge directly." Damien studied her carefully, admiration and concern mixing clearly behind his thoughtful gaze. Your courage continues to inspire me, Elena, but please, exercise caution moving forward. I cannot bear the thought of losing you now, especially after everything we've overcome together. Elena nodded reassuringly, though determination remained steady behind her eyes. I have no intention of backing down now. Together, we will uncover whoever this mysterious figure truly is, and ensure they face consequences appropriate for their dangerous manipulations. As tension settled steadily over the estate once more, everyone understood clearly that despite recent victories against Gideon Cross and Marcus's betrayal, a far greater, more calculated threat remained hidden carefully, just beyond their immediate reach, patiently waiting for the perfect opportunity to strike again. The mysterious figure's warning hung heavily over the estate for weeks. Security tightened to its highest levels, yet no further sign of the hooded stranger emerged, until one quiet evening, when everything finally came together in a way nobody fully anticipated. Elena had grown accustomed to the constant presence of guards, though she never stopped listening carefully to her instincts, trusting them completely after everything they had already revealed. It was during a private council meeting, called to finalize remaining details of the treaty with Ashgrove's new leadership, that her instincts suddenly flared with unmistakable urgency. Something is wrong, she whispered urgently to Damien, seated beside him at the long council table. The danger, it's here, right now. Damien's expression sharpened immediately, years of trusting her abilities, allowing him to react instantly without hesitation. Lucas, he said quietly but firmly, seal the room. Allow no one to leave or enter until I say otherwise. Confusion rippled through the assembled council members, uncertain murmurs spreading as guards moved swiftly to secure the exits. Elena scanned the room carefully, her instincts guiding her attention gradually toward a quiet advisor seated near the room's edge, someone who had joined the council only recently, following Ashgrove's new leadership transition. There, she said quietly, nodding subtly toward the advisor. The danger comes from them. Damien's eyes narrowed, studying the advisor carefully. The man, sensing sudden attention shifting toward him, straightened nervously in his seat. Is there a problem? The advisor asked, his voice carefully controlled, though Elena sensed unmistakable tension radiating from him. Remove your hood, Damien said calmly, though authority carried clearly through his quiet tone. The cloak you wore during your first private meeting with Elena in the gardens. The advisor's composure faltered visibly, panic flashing briefly behind his eyes before he attempted quickly to bolt from his seat. Guards moved instantly, restraining him firmly before he could escape. I mean no harm, the man insisted quickly, though his earlier composed authority had entirely dissolved into obvious panic. Then explain yourself, Damien demanded firmly. Why did you approach Elena privately, delivering cryptic threats regarding our recent investigation? The man hesitated, clearly weighing his limited options carefully, before finally sighing in defeat. My name is Owen Faircross. I served as a quiet advisor within neutral territories, long before Ashgrove's recent leadership transition. I sought only to protect my own position and influence, fearing that continued peace between your packs would eliminate opportunities I had carefully cultivated for personal gain, through ongoing tension and instability. You wished for conflict to continue, Mira said sharply. Purely for your own selfish advantage? Owen nodded slowly, shame evident behind his lingering nervousness. I never intended physical harm toward anyone specifically. I merely hoped to delay peace negotiations, allowing myself additional time to secure alternative arrangements benefiting my own interests. Damien studied him carefully, disappointment evident, though notably less severe than his reaction toward Marcus's earlier betrayal. Your selfishness nearly reignited unnecessary conflict between two packs, finally seeking genuine peace. I understand the severity of my actions, Owen admitted quietly. I am prepared to accept whatever judgment you deem appropriate. Damien considered carefully before responding. You will face formal judgment before this council, though your cooperation now in fully explaining your motives will be considered fairly during that process. Owen nodded slowly, resigned entirely to the consequences of his selfish manipulation. Guards led him quietly from the room, allowing the tense council meeting finally to settle back into calmer order. Once the immediate danger passed, Damien turned toward Elena, relief and admiration evident clearly behind his composed exterior. Once again, your instincts have proven invaluable, Elena. Without your abilities, Owen's manipulation might have continued indefinitely, threatening the peace we've worked so carefully to establish. Elena smiled softly, exhaustion evident, though satisfaction settling comfortably alongside it. I'm simply relieved this chapter is finally closing. With Owen's manipulation exposed and the immediate threat neutralized, negotiations with Ashgrove's new leadership resumed smoothly, culminating finally within days in a formal treaty establishing lasting peace between the two territories, ensuring stability and cooperation moving forward. As celebrations began throughout the pack, marking both the treaty's completion and Damien's full recovery from his earlier ordeal, Elena found herself once again walking quietly alongside Damien through the familiar estate gardens, moonlight illuminating softly around them. It seems peace has finally settled around us, Elena remarked softly, appreciating the calm quiet following weeks of tension and uncertainty. Damien nodded, though his expression carried something deeper, more personal, as he turned fully toward her, beneath the soft glow of moonlight. Elena, these past months have changed everything I understood about leadership, trust, and genuine connection. You saved my life initially, through instincts I did not yet understand, but you have continued saving me since then, through honesty, courage, and unwavering loyalty. Elena felt warmth spreading gently through her chest, understanding clearly the sincerity behind his heartfelt words. You've changed my understanding of myself as well, Damien. I spent my entire life believing myself simply strange, isolated by abilities I never fully understood. You helped me discover purpose and belonging I never imagined possible. Damien reached gently for her hand, his expression open and vulnerable, in a way she had rarely witnessed throughout their tumultuous months together. I do not wish to hide my feelings any longer, Elena. Whatever ancient bond initially connected us, my feelings toward you now exist entirely independent of prophecy or fate. I love you, genuinely and completely, for exactly who you are. Elena felt tears of joy gathering gently at the corners of her eyes, overwhelmed by the depth of emotion clearly present within his heartfelt confession. I love you too, Damien. Completely, and without hesitation. Their quiet declaration was met by a gentle, lingering kiss beneath the soft moonlight, sealing quietly the depth of connection they had carefully built together, throughout months of danger, uncertainty, and unwavering loyalty. In the days that followed, Damien formally acknowledged Elena publicly before the entire pack, not merely as the woman who saved his life, but as his chosen partner, someone whose courage, honesty, and unwavering strength had proven her worthy of standing equally alongside him as leader and protector of their people. The pack, having witnessed firsthand Elena's crucial role throughout recent events, welcomed her wholeheartedly, celebrating the unlikely bond between a humble waitress and their alpha king, a connection that had ultimately saved not only Damien's life, but the stability and future of their entire community. As for Marcus, his formal judgment resulted in exile rather than harsher punishment, tempered by genuine remorse and his crucial cooperation in exposing Gideon's treachery. Given time and distance, perhaps redemption remained possible, though Damien understood clearly that rebuilding trust with his brother would require patience neither of them could rush. Gideon Cross remained permanently stripped of power, his ambition ultimately costing him everything he had once carefully built. Owen Faircross faced similar consequences, his selfish manipulation exposed fully, before losing any remaining influence within neutral territories. Through it all, Elena Whitmore, once simply an overlooked waitress sensing things others could not explain, found herself transformed entirely, not merely into the Alpha King's chosen partner, but into a symbol of hope, courage, and genuine connection, triumphing over deception, ambition, and betrayal. Standing together finally beneath clear skies, Damien and Elena faced their future confidently, understanding fully that whatever challenges still awaited them, they would face them together, bound not merely by ancient prophecy, but by genuine, unwavering love, earned through courage, honesty, and unshakable loyalty. And in that quiet, hopeful moment, both of them understood clearly that sometimes, the most extraordinary stories begin with the simplest, most courageous choice, to stand up and speak the truth, even when the whole world tells you to stay silent.